Hello, Guitar Smarts fans. Before you check out this podcast, I want to make you aware of a cool new place where you can interact with other Guitar Smarts listeners. It's a Facebook group called the Guitar Geek Hangout. That's where we hang out and talk about all things guitar. So, if you like the Guitar Smarts podcast, come and chat with Kiran and myself over in the Guitar Geek Hangout on Facebook. Maybe check out some pre-podcast clips and even get involved in asking and answering lots of questions from the other page dwellers. Hope to see you there.
Oh, I did Christmas over in Egypt, so I did a whole Christmas set, which was bizarre, seeing people in their bikinis and budgie smugglers dancing to Christmas tunes.
That's not Christmas. That's not Christmas.
Right by the pool. Yeah, that was quite strange.
Greetings! Welcome to another Guitar Smarts podcast. Thanks for joining us. This week, we're privileged to have another guest with us to discuss all things guitar and music. Damiain Lodrick has worked in music for his entire professional life and has been lucky enough to see the world whilst travelling as a working musician, culminating and continuing to flourish running his premier events band, the DLB. Our conversation was utterly fascinating and we can't wait to have him back on the podcast again. So please check him out online at thedamiainlodrickband.co.uk. Damian is spelt D-A-M-I-A-I-N. Check him out on Facebook and Instagram as well. He's got pages there too, so please go and give him a like and say hello. Subscribe to the podcast in your favourite podcast app so that you don't miss all the other Guitar Smarts podcasts. Come and give us a like on our Facebook page too. That's facebook.com/Guitar Smarts. And follow us on Instagram using the handle @guitar_smarts. That's enough waffle from me. Let's get to it.
Hey Matt, how you doing?
Hey Kiran, I'm good, thanks mate. How are you?
I'm very good, thank you. Sorry, the reason I'm laughing is because I was just being particularly crude before we started. So, but that's all got to clean up now.
No surprises there.
Yeah, well, no surprises there. How's your week been, okay?
It's been busy but good. I'm glad it's Friday, as usual, because it's Friday and also we're doing this podcast, so hey, happy days.
Love it. I mean, we release them on a Monday, don't we? But we keep saying it's Friday. Most people might hear it on a Monday or whatever day they choose to download it. But for us, it's part of our Friday, which is what I always really look forward to. And today is a great one for us because we've got a guest on the show.
Hooray!
So we have got a very dear friend of mine joining us today. So Damiain Lodrick is a very talented multi-instrumentalist, band leader and frontman, music teacher, studio engineer, live engineer, and all-round international entertainer. Currently based in the south of the UK, he is the founder of the Damiain Lodrick Band and a leading professional band, really, which has several different lineups and arrangements that are able to provide live experiences for any occasion across a range of different genres. So Damiain and I have known each other for 25 years or more, probably. We'll have to ask him, how long have we actually known each other? But we've played in a number of different bands over that time together. As I said, he's a dear friend of mine, but above all things, the reason we thought it would be good to have him on the show today is he's an incredible guitarist as well. So let's welcome to the Guitar Smarts podcast to chat about what has been and will continue to be a life in music. Mr. Damiain Lodrick, welcome to the show.
Welcome Damian.
Oh, thank you so much, guys. I'm really, really pleased. So pleased to be here.
The pleasure's ours.
I'm a big fan of the Guitar Smarts podcast. I'm not just saying that, and I've told Kiran many times. I just love listening to the podcast every Monday. The first moment I get, I'll turn it on, and I was cleaning the car out. I'll take it wherever, and it just makes me laugh and smile. And yeah, just the one about guitar. What do you call it?
I think they're all about guitar. I think
they are all about guitar.
We talk about guitars.
The setting up with the guitar.
Oh yeah,
the 8 things that you need to do for setting up the guitar. I really enjoyed that one. But Kiran sets up my guitar, so I don't need to know any of that. I just get it. If I get a new guitar, I just pass it directly to him. And I've got a new guitar and I need to set it and I need it setting up.
You've got a lovely Ernie Ball-esque Lukather type guitar, which I'm really looking forward to getting my hands on. How long have you had it now? A couple of weeks?
Yeah, 2 or 3 weeks. Yeah, just needs a few bits and pieces doing on it, which only you can do. I've had a go.
Yeah.
I've probably made it 10 times worse, and I thought I can do these things. I've got some tools. I bought that little bag of tool things, which are really, really cool. But anyway,
you've got to get it into Kiran's hands because he's the guitar Gandalf.
Guitar Gandalf.
Oh, well, that's
and do you know what? Actually, Damian, it's a really good point. Doing those podcasts, it's transformative for me because in 25 years of being a guitarist, I've never invested any real time or effort into the knowledge and the skills to try and set anything up. So after that podcast, I went away and spent some time on my Strat, and I feel like I've got a new guitar now. It's fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely. I can tinker away a little bit.
Yeah,
there's only certain things that I really won't do, and Kiran has the mastering expertise in his fingers.
Oh, that's very kind.
Exactly.
But I mean, look, I think it's a difficult one when you've just bought a which was in this case, right, is a second-hand guitar, but by all accounts, it looks in really good condition. But I think the 8 Steps podcast that we did was probably, I think, best designed for people that have had a guitar set up. Either from the shop or they've had it set up by a tech. And it's more about what you can do to routinely just do a few little adjustments here and there to keep it in good playing condition. Because there's nothing worse than, it's got into a really nice kind of setup state from a tech. And then over time, you kind of just fall out of love with it because you think this just doesn't play right anymore. So those little 8 steps were kind of things to keep it in check and prevent it from having to go too frequently to the guitar tech. But I always like kind of seeing the guitars that you buy secondhand, Damo, and you've bought some great ones. But they're definitely little labours of love for me because I get like right. Okay, we could do this, we could do that. And you're brilliant because your eyes rapidly glaze over when I start talking about too much jargon. And then the immortal words just come out, which is just do whatever you think you want to do to it. And I just go, great. And I just have free reign on it. So,
But I think that's because you know how I play and you know what I want from my guitar. And I think that's really important. I think spending time, I remember you talking about spending time with the person that you're setting that guitar up for. And you don't really need to do that with me because you know the way I play and how I play and where I play and what I do to my guitars. And
it's not something that every tech can either have the time to do or because they're doing probably a huge volume of them. I try to keep the volumes that I do to a manageable pace because that's what I like to do with them. I like to sit down and see how somebody plays. I can't wait to get hold of that one, and we can see how we can make it part of your toolkit. Is it one you intend to gig? Do you think? Is it going to become one of your main gigging?
Most definitely, okay, yes. Along with my OLP, which they don't make anymore.
Oh yeah, that was kind of like did that become the Sterling Music Man kind of?
That's exactly it.
Is that it? Yeah, I thought so. Yeah.
Yeah,
I remember seeing those.
I've got an OLP Luke, which Kiran ripped apart and put back together with new pickups in. Still, for the life of me, I can't remember. He only told me like a week or so ago what you put in there. But they're really good. Dave Gilmour, Seymour Duncans, I think.
Oh, wow.
And an Iron Gear.
Yeah, well remembered. See, you do.
I do remember. Yes, yeah. I do remember. I do take in some things you say. And then this new one, which is a Sterling Music Man LD 100. So, yes.
I'm jealous because I'm still very deep in a Lukather Hall at the moment, which is I never thought I'd say that actually, but he's just an incredible musician. And I keep looking at guitar. I keep looking and finding guitars attractive now that are like Music Man guitars or like the Lukather style stuff because anyway, that's awesome. That's cool. I'm looking forward to seeing it as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think his signature guitars have managed to strike that right balance of, being a real workhorse guitar with versatility and features and neck profiles and things that you would just recognize as being great workhorse guitar for a professional guitarist, but also being really quite sexy to look at and being quite desirable with some of the finishes. Sometimes I see some of these artists' guitars or indeed kind of real kind of session player signature guitars and you go, okay, that's clearly a really functional instrument, a tool of the trade that is going to get them, through countless gigs and studio sessions and give them all that versatility. And you look at it and you go, but it's not all that sexy to look at. But the Luke model guitars, I think, do both of those things.
Yeah, absolutely. And they just fit in my hands nicely. It's like the guitar I've been waiting for.
And it's funny you say that, because that's one of the things I've realised watching Lukather, is that I've never seen a guitarist look so kind of at one with his guitar. It's almost like it's part of him.
Absolutely.
He never seems to look like he's struggling to play. And some guitarists really look like they're wringing the neck of their instrument, and it's, you know, they might be playing it great, but they look like it's a struggle. With him, it always looks like it's half his effort to play, no matter what he's playing. He's obviously incredibly comfortable with that instrument. Testament to him and to Music Man for making such great guitars.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So if you've just tuned in, guys, welcome to the Steve Lukather Guitar Show. This is episode 3 in the series, where each week we go deeper and deeper in love with Steve Lukather. And today, joining us on the show is the world's #1 Steve Lukather fan, Damiain Lodrick. So Damiain, when did you dedicate a life in music to becoming more like Steve Lukather? Is that
1990? Exactly, 1995.
It's fair to say he's a huge influence for you, though, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, I know exactly when it was. Apart from hearing Rosanna in Africa when I was a kid, it was on like Guitar Techniques or Guitarist magazine. There was, I think it was Guitar Techniques. There was Dave's Gone Skiing from the Tambu album. That was the first time I heard this track. I was just blown away by absolutely everything on that track. Guitar playing was just amazing. The time signature, that it was interesting, the drum sounds, the bass playing, the piano solo was just mind-blowing. Everything about this instrumental track just absolutely blew me away, and I wanted to find out more about this band called Toto that wasn't just Rosanna and Africa, which I really loved, but I didn't know they produced stuff like that. That was just eye-opening.
That's my favorite Toto album, Tambu. Even just from a recording quality perspective, as an audio file, you put that on a decent hi-fi and it's like a reference album for me. You can just set up a hi-fi to that album because every instrument is so beautifully produced on it.
Absolutely.
That you go, okay, this is a good piece of hi-fi if it's reproducing this album in the way that I want to hear it. But so Steve Lukather in a Guitar Techniques album, but was he your first kind of influence that made you want to think about devoting your life to music? How did that happen? I don't actually know that. I don't think I've ever asked you that. I've just always known you as a professional musician. When I was working in a guitar shop, I must have been 17, 18 at the time, and you were a regular customer and you knew the owner. So you'd come in and we'd hang out and we'd chat about guitars, we'd play guitar all day, and you were just, at the time, you know, the professional musician that came in to stock up on stuff, and then you were off to a gig somewhere that day. But I don't remember, you know, ever asking you how that became your life. I've always just known you as a professional musician. At what point did that kind of click for you, and you were like, right, that's my life set now. That is what I'm going to do?
What a question. Gosh, I think I've always known that I wanted to do music ever since I was in primary school, and I started playing the piano first. So piano is my first instrument, and I didn't do very well. My piano teacher, Mr. Stevens, I must have been only about 7 or 8, said that I wouldn't amount to anything because I just wasn't interested in learning whatever it was in the music book. All I wanted to do was just explore and improvise, and I mean, just make sounds. I was, you know, and I've got an older cousin who was a massive influence on me, and only later on found out was a massive Toto fan. His influence, and seeing him play Van Halen Jump on the piano, on my piano at home at the time, was just, I want to do that. I want to play that kind of piano. I didn't want to play classical piano. Those were my first influences. So I was even being influenced by Toto, but I didn't realize it at that early age. So I can't go through everything. It will take forever. It really will.
But all roads definitely lead back to Toto in some way.
Basically, yeah, absolutely. So
that's a T-shirt waiting to be printed, isn't it? All roads lead to Taunton.
So I mean, I got into. I was in a couple of bands at school playing keys. I was actually playing keys bass on the synthesizer. We had a school synthesizer. We had one of my friends one of my school friends who played piano, but he played it like a guitar. So he played lots of chords and sung, and I played the bass line on the synth and any synth parts that I needed to do with my right hand. And we had a drummer, and that was sort of the beginning of me just getting the bug. We would practice every Friday after school, and I just wanted to play music. That was all I wanted to do. And then that turned into a slightly bigger one where I actually learnt. This was the point when my friend said to me, right, you're going to be the bass player in the band, actually bass player. And I said, okay, I just don't know how to play the bass. So he said, here's my bass guitar, not go away and learn to play it, because he wouldn't let me borrow it. But I had to just learn to play it at rehearsals. Once a week or twice a week whenever we got together, obviously starting playing blues just with the A, D and E strings, because that's all I knew. So I actually learned to play bass first, and I really got into my bass playing before playing guitar, which came a couple of years later on. So I just taught myself to play the guitar at that point with a tape player. And I remember Matt talking about this you were talking about, or Kiran was about, the
pause button and the rewinding and the
absolutely.
Trying to figure it out.
I didn't have a CD player. I only had tapes. I just remember learning Sting's version of Little Wing. The guitar solo in that is just wonderful. So that was one of the first things I learned. I couldn't really play many chords. I just wanted to play solos.
Yeah,
that was all I wanted to do.
The cool stuff.
Yeah. So I forgot what you asked me.
Well, that is what I asked you. It's like, how did you? So that's kind of where I want to go with this, right? Because I think actually when I first met you, you were in an originals band,
yes,
and you were on bass, and it was a really great originals band. I must say, I still have some of the CD that you gave me of the band, and the songs were just incredible. The female vocalist just had one of those voices that to this day is one of the nicest voices I've heard in a long time.
So sorry to interrupt this super interesting conversation. However, if you've made it this far, you should probably subscribe to the Guitar Smarts podcast. You can do that in your favourite podcast app. Go and do that now, and then come back to the show. Let's get back to it.
And so you were on bass there, and then we started kind of playing guitar together a few years after that. And I remember, you always were saying, "Well, I'm still progressing with my guitar. I'm still kind of learning guitar." Fast forward now, decades on, you're this monstrous guitar player. But I remember you kind of making that transition and then really getting into your guitar playing. And
yeah,
I think Queen and Gilmour were some of the kind of big influences on you, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Dave Gilmour was my first real guitar hero, and I just wanted to play like Dave Gilmour, really. I wanted to play, I learned to play Shine On You Crazy Diamond note for note, and Comfortably Numb, and those epic Pink Floyd numbers. And I was just obsessed with Pink Floyd, and I named my first guitar Gilly. I haven't named any of my other guitars since. So yeah, my very first guitar that my dad bought me, which was a Marlin. I don't know if you remember Marlins.
Yes. Yeah, I do remember Marlins. Yeah.
A Marlin Sidewinder it was, that had active circuitry in it and everything. That
sounds like a serious guitar.
It was great. It was absolutely great. And I can't remember what, but that wasn't such a great thing, the amp, that it wasn't producing the sounds. I needed obviously a valve amp or a setup like Dave Gilmour to sound like Dave Gilmour. I couldn't quite emulate it. And I wasn't really into that. I was just wanting to make the sounds. I was learning the craft of being a guitarist. I wasn't so much into the gear. I didn't have any money, so I wasn't really into the gear at all. I just knew that I had a guitar, and I just wanted to learn to play like Dave Gilmour. So and I wasn't getting to play out like Dave Gilmour, and I never have actually. I've never got to play any Pink Floyd live. I'd love to, but in any bands, nobody's ever done it. I've been in. I wrote a list all the bands that I've been in. I don't know whether you know, I was in a punk band.
I didn't know that. I can't even imagine that.
Really?
Like actual Sex Pistols and Ramones stuff. Or...
It was all originals, and they were going for a record deal, and I lasted one gig, and then I quit. I just realised that I wasn't really into my punk music at all. It didn't do anything for me, and I was playing keys in a punk band, which just felt really wrong. I couldn't, you can't rock out so much on keys unless you've got a big Hammond B3 that you can push around.
And then set fire to at the end of every gig.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I had a really nice Roland keyboard that I wasn't going to break for every gig. And then I got into a covers band, functions bands, and then I just wrote a list. So there was function bands. I got into soul bands, playing bass and keys first, then bass. Then I joined that originals band while still doing the soul band, and we were doing quite well. When I say we, it was this one woman. It was her brainchild, and I was playing bass, and I was really into my bass at this point. I was playing 6-string bass, and I had a whole rack of amp stuff that I would take along with my 4x10. I remember the manager not really liking the fact that I was too session. This is my fingers up in the air. Too session player sounding like, rather than playing with a pick on a precision or a more raspy. I think he was wanting me to sound more raspy and not so clean. And then Vegas happened.
I remember Vegas.
Yes, because Kiran was involved with Vegas, which was another big sort of 8-10 piece function band. And that was shortly before Kiran and I branched off and did our, which was The Professionals, which was 2 guitars, two vocals, the biggest PA on the planet. And
it was the biggest guitar show on the planet, wasn't it?
It was like... I found some pictures the other day, and I was still playing my original Marlin at that point as well, which I can't believe I played that guitar, because it's actually awful guitar to play. It probably needs a thing. I've just never really done anything about it. So there were countless bands, ended up playing for another 3 different soul bands on bass and on keys. And it wasn't until I got to there was a covers band called The Platonics that I started really getting into guitar. Really, my real love of guitar came out of playing for my band, Funky Hotel. Was it my band? Can I say that?
That's a cool band name.
Funky Hotel, yes.
That I remember Funky Hotel. That was almost like a super group of like the musicians in the area.
Yeah.
Right? It's like, I remember you going out and you picked like the best of each kind of instrument, each instrumentalist. Like, and I remember thinking, well, that is a lineup of a brilliant band, because I knew all of these musicians and I'd played with them with you, and I was just like, wow, he's put together a super group there. And it was all good cover songs, but really just the arrangements that you guys did of everything was fantastic. And I think that was a bit of a turning point. Do you in terms of your guitar playing, do you think that's the point where you realized, okay, I'm in love with the guitar now, and this is going to be something I'm going to really dedicate myself to within a band, or do you still consider yourself a piano player and a bass player that happens to play guitar?
Yes. This is a big question. It's difficult to say. I think I'm a musician that plays these instruments. Throughout my time in all of these different types of bands, the Fabulous Fug Band, the Crooners, the Cheese Doctors, Rufus Stone, Big Brother Soul, Soul Suspects, guitar for youth theatres I did Jesus Christ Superstar, did Les Mis a couple of times, and Fame. All of these different aspects, whatever instrument I was playing, I would try and be that musician, that technician that plays their instrument the way that musician would play that instrument. Does that make sense?
It does. I mean, yeah, it does. And I see you kind of do this, like, is you get really deep into that instrument when you're required to for that particular set of gigs.
Yeah. Whatever instrument that I'm playing, I like when I got into bass playing, I really studied different bass players. I, became obsessed with Mark King, Victor Wooten in your band, who in Matt's band, wasn't it? Yeah. No, in Kieran's band. But even, like Pino Palladino, in even Victor Wooten classes Paul McCartney as somebody to go and listen to. Go and listen to Paul McCartney playing the bass. That was Victor Wooten saying that. So yeah, not that I ever felt that I ever came close to any of these names. I think I loved slap bass playing when it was really uncool. So I learned it and then just put it away. And then all of these people suddenly came out of the woodwork. And, I was really, yeah. So I'll say that I was ahead of my time with learning to play slap bass when it was really uncool.
It was really uncool because it was just Mark King at the time, wasn't it?
It was just Mark King, yeah.
Before Davey 504, this is now.
Oh yes.
I went and watched some of his stuff.
I have to do that.
After that, I forgot to mention it. Davey 505. I was like, who's this guy? Oh my God.
I mean, he's good, right?
But his videos are hilarious as well.
He's very tongue-in-cheek. After that episode we did on the Ultimate Covers Band, where I mentioned Davey 504, I had different friends texting me going, Davey 504, yes. Yeah. So he's clearly got this following. It's not just me. But, so here's a question I wanted to ask both of you guys, right? So both of you have gone off and done music degrees. Matt, ACM, Damo, performing music degree as well. So, we've spoken about, Damian, the kind of bands and things that you've been in and kind of honing your craft and learning your instruments through all these variety of different bands and figuring out which instruments were for you. And then I remember a kind of point in your life where you were like, right, no, I'm really going to go and do this and take a dedicated amount of time out of my life to go and do this with some qualification. So, and Matt, I know you did the same. I really want to kind of understand from both of you, as someone who hasn't done this and who's very much self-taught, but now trying to kind of accelerate my learning, how you guys found that experience. And I wonder if you two got the same kind of enjoyment and kind of satisfaction out of doing it.
Yeah.
So Damo, why don't you start? I mean, what made you think, right, I need to go and study music properly now?
You touched on something which I hadn't really thought about when you said what we were have a chat about today, was the fact that I was at the time a guitar teacher, and that was my main source of income, regular income. I was teaching in many schools and had many private students. I then started working in a school, and this opens up many other questions, I know, but I started working in a school where we had a recording studio built with a radio station and a TV studio. Okay.
Wow.
Yes. So, and I was brought in to manage or coordinate this for the area that it was that the school was in, the secondary school that it was in, and all its feeder primary schools. And the idea was to raise oracy and literacy within the community. So it was teaching the community and kids and staff how to make TV programs, how to make recordings, how to make radio programs, etc. To cut that short, the headmaster really wanted me, to answer your question, that is, the headmaster really wanted me to become a secondary school music teacher. And he said, would I be interested in going to do the degree? And I said, no. For about 2 or 3 years, I said no, because I was really happy running this studio, as you would be, with lots and lots of toys.
Oh my God. I'm sorry to interrupt. I remember when you gave me the call and said, so they've asked me to design this studio, and it's basically a blank canvas. And the school was in a developing area, right? So it wasn't a kind of privileged area, right? But they'd been given this incredible sum of money, and they brought you involved to basically from the ground upwards develop, design, and have commissioned this state-of-the-art recording studio with which you could spec out, and then they wanted you to run it. And I remember at the time feeling like it was you, right? But we had won the lottery. I was like, this is just the best thing ever, and that studio, I mean, honestly, it was stunning, absolutely stunning. It was as good as a commercial studio. Yeah, it was a proper full commercial studio, full Pro Tools, everything, proper live rooms. It was stunning. So I can imagine. I can imagine you weren't in any great need to quit that gig anytime soon to go back to school, right?
Absolutely,
for yourself.
So, but eventually, I did decide that it was time for me to really push myself and get this qualification. So they released me for some time, and I did it full time whilst working full time. I don't quite know how I made that work, but I did. The degree itself was, and I'm not sure whether yours was like this, Matt, but it was modular. So you did different modules on various different things. For the life of me, I trying to rack my brains with what modules there were. The ones that spring to mind were there was a jazz module, there was a club music module, where eventually I think you had to learn about club music and within the context of society, etc. And you had to produce a 20-minute set stuff, and I wasn't very good at all really, because you need to know your records inside out, and I didn't know my records inside out, so I didn't do too well on that module. But instrumental teaching, songwriting, film music, how to perform a piece of music, and that wasn't the title of that module, but this is the one that makes me laugh the most, because you had to perform a piece of music, but before you perform the piece of music, you had to write an essay on how you were going to perform that piece of music, down to facial expressions, what you were doing with your what you were doing with your hands, well, how where you were going to walk, everything, down to every single minutia of whatever it is that you were going to do, you had to write down. The most expressive guitarist from that point of view is Mr. Vai. My one and only Vai piece of music, I pulled that out the bag. And what's it called?
For the Love of God, no?
For the Love of God, that's it.
Oh, wow, what a song.
I played that. I had already previously learnt this and got down to the point. Now we need to explain the finger. I even got into this point where beautiful note. No, not the.
Oh, right, okay. Not the circular vibrato thing that he does.
No, that's the left hand. It's the finger where you play a note and you take your plucking hand and you point to the said note like this, as if it's an amazing note, and you have a real massive expression of, wow, look at this note. Do you remember this note, Kiran?
I do. I honestly do. I remember both those things that you're talking about. So I watched, Vai, I think he's just had hand surgery or something, hasn't he? He's just released a track on social media. Is it called Knapsack or something?
Knapsack, yeah.
Where it's all legato stuff on his left hand, and it's quite phenomenal. But I remember watching that a week or so ago and kind of just chuckling to myself at his quite frankly ridiculous and slightly obscene looking vibrato technique on his left hand. It just looks just too erotic when he's doing it. Of course, it sounds incredible. It's Vi, right? It is. It's a real labour of love on that poor fretboard. But what you're referring to, Damian, was one of these things that he used to like. Only Vi can get away with this, right? When he was performing live, as well as all of the flamboyancy and stuff that he does, he's a proper showman, right? Whether you care for his music and his style or not, you can't help but admire the confidence and the showmanship as a guitarist.
Yeah,
and he, I remember us just chuckling at the audacity of somebody to be able to just be playing this intricate solo, and then all of a sudden, right in the middle of a huge kind of series of notes, just all of a sudden, or just pause in just the right place in the phrasing to remark at his own note choice and how beautiful it was, and then to bring the audience on that journey by lifting the index finger of his right hand and just pointing at that note, so that we could all share in how incredible his note choice was. So you did that in a performance, or
so I did that. I wrote it in my essay. You had to write things, write it very academically, so and not at all tongue in cheek. So. God knows how I managed to even reference some of those things with texts and stuff. But it was good from an academic point of view as well. And then it culminated in a 20-minute full-on performance for the dissertation. You had to do a 20-minute performance. I remember, Matt, you mentioned Michael Landau.
Yeah, great guitarist.
And I can't remember what context you remember, but his version, no, not his version, Steve Lukather's version of I'm Buzzed.
Oh, yeah, of course, which is a Landau track, isn't it, I think?
That's it, yeah.
Yeah.
And then going into Birdland.
So was it one complete piece? Did you have to basically medley?
I medleyed.
Which is what you do anyway, isn't it?
Which is what I do, yeah. I do like a medley.
Yeah, me too.
And then finished off with the Rumble from West Side Story, the Chick Corea and Steve Vai version. You've got to check this out. I'm
going to. I haven't heard it.
It's just absolutely phenomenal. So I rearranged this because it's for two bands, Steve Vai's Monsters and Chick Corea's Electric Band. I can't remember and you can hear one band in one headphone if you've got headphones on, and one band in another headphone, and they play different parts of this, the Rumble. So I arranged it for one band, which the drummer was very, very pleased about. That he got to do it all. Good old Dom.
It's like, can't we just do a Beatles song?
Yes. So it went down very well. Anyway, it did go down very well. So, I mean, I started off, to answer the question, I started off thinking, because I'd done so much music in my life, that I was about to sit back a little bit and just sort of ride out 3 years. And it turned out that I had to work really hard. And the harder I worked, the harder I wanted to work. I really wanted to get as much out of it as I possibly could. And, I had no knowledge about club music. I still don't, but I really enjoyed the module about its context and in society. And so I learned an awful lot, even learned an awful lot about instrumental teaching. And I'd been teaching for quite some time. Up until that point, I was teaching about 15 years up until when I first started doing this degree. So I learned an awful lot.
Would you recommend it to somebody who's thinking about that? Because obviously you'd already established yourself as a kind of live musician and studio engineer and sound engineer by that point. So I think you were going back to university to study, right? This was you'd already got your career by this point.
I was a mature student. I had already started a degree when I was very young. Well, not very young. I mean, at proper degree age, and up in Manchester doing a degree in sound recording and pop music and sound recording. But personal reasons, I pulled out of that one and postponed my career for a little bit. But I would recommend it. I would recommend it from someone that has got some knowledge of music. The ones that did well, I feel, were the ones that were taking their instruments seriously, not that could just play a little bit on their said instruments. Some were, very, 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 very talented on their instruments and then doing the degree on top, and talented on two instruments. I remember this guy picking up the violin at a jazz night, jazz solo, and handing it back. And I didn't realise he didn't play violin. And it was just remarkable. It was absolutely remarkable. So there was some real talent there. There was some real talent. But you can't just get by on talent. You need to have the grounding in. So I had got GCSE and A-level music. And I think me doing A-level music really, really helped me with further study, studying Bach.
I didn't know you had that. I didn't know you had that. I mean, that makes perfect sense now. And because your theory has always been really good. But I thought your theory was kind of more organically taught just from being a performing musician, and because you had an interest in it. I hadn't realised you'd actually gone to the level of kind of, you know, fully through high school, you know, studying and doing exams of music. But that makes a lot of sense. Matt, did you have a similar kind of experience in when you were studying music and kind of ACM?
My experience sounds very similar to yours, Damian. It was very much a case of, you know, there was lots of different modules, lots of different subjects that we went throughout the years, and some of them I really enjoyed, some of them I really did. The good thing about where I studied, which was the ACM in Guildford, all the teachers there were in the music industry. A lot of them were session musicians and things like that, and they were, you know, this was another you know, arrow in the quiver kind of thing. You know, they were teaching here as well as working. Some of the teachers there would go off for 6 months at a time because they were on tour, and then they would come back and carry on teaching kind of thing, you know. And I really enjoyed it from a playing perspective. I really enjoyed the lessons and the modules that were very much about playing, but I struggled with some of the other modules that were a bit more academic, because actually the interest wasn't there, and I didn't really have a goal in mind. You know, I was studying because I wanted to, you know, I just finished an apprenticeship for 4 years as an engineer, and I was kind of like, well, if I don't do this now, I'm never going to do it. So why don't I try and just study music for a few years and see where it ends up?
That's really cool. That's really brave, right? Because you could have quite easily gone from that apprenticeship and gone, right, now I need to absolutely go and earn some money and go straight into applying my apprenticeship. So wow, I didn't know that about you either, that you'd taken that decision.
Exactly, so it was a big jump. You know, I'd done 4 years studying to be, you know, an engineer, and it's still my day job now. You know, I did fall back on that, but one of the clear things is the people that have gone on to have success from when I was studying are people that very clearly had an intention and a goal in mind for what they wanted to do with their career as a musician, and I was very much kind of, well, I just want to study this for now and then see what happens. But I think it made it clear to me that, you know, there's a responsibility on you as a student to commit to studying. It's not just about, is the course right for you or is the information right? You have to apply yourself to it, and I think you'll have success, you know, in anything in life if you apply yourself correctly. But yeah, it's a very similar experience, and I enjoyed it. The certain takeaways for me were just playing with other people, meeting other people, other musicians, and getting to play with other people. So important. You know, anybody who's listening now, if you're wondering, well, what's the best thing you can do to develop your playing? For me, that it's always been playing with other people in a room, you know, playing your instrument and being in a band, a creative environment.
Absolutely. I remember you inviting me to a jam night once, Matt. We've been playing in a band for a few years, you and I, and I'd really missed just going to jam nights, because when you get into a routine of gigging every weekend, you don't tend to go to jam nights because you've already got that outlet, and you know, you've run out of hours in the week. But we were having a little bit of a time off from the band, and we were both eager to get out and play for a little bit as well. So we said, well, let's just go to this jam night. And you were like, oh yeah, there's a jam night near where I am. We'll go to that one. I was like, oh yeah, cool. All right. I've not been to that one before, but you know, it'll be fun. Go to a different jam night. Anyway, I got to this jam night, and as you do, you know, you just think, okay, it's going to be the standard kind of stuff. Regular jam night in the home counties of Surrey, this little unassuming pub on the outskirts of Guildford. And then the jam night kind of started, and I was like, okay, there's some good players here. This is pretty good. And then as the night progressively went on, I was just going, what is going on here? Like, what is this jam night? Like, the caliber of some of the musicians was absolutely mind-blowing. I was like, what is happening at this pub in the middle of nowhere? And then I kind of spoke to you about it, and you're like, oh yeah, most of these are like teachers and things at ACM, or students at ACM, and this little country pub in the middle of nowhere just happens to be obviously hosting a jam night, but it's near this kind of prestigious kind of music school. But yeah, I remember going away from that jam night going, wow, okay, don't judge a book by its covers. There was some incredible players.
It wasn't your average kind of, you know, blues jam kind of thing. It was exactly that. It was kind of like, well, I remember when I was at ACM, one of the teachers there was a guy called Dave Kilminster, who is actually now Roger Waters' guitarist. You know, he's basically doing Dave Gilmour. thing, and he was teaching that, and he was saying once how when he was working in LA, there's all these kind of jazz clubs and things like that where, you know, musicians are playing in the house band from like Monday to Saturday every night. But on a Sunday, they all go to one particular place on a night off to jam. And he said, that's where you go when you want to see. If you're a musician and you want to see good live music, you don't go to the regular gig. You go to the gig where they all get together to jam. You know, and it was kind of like that in Guildford. It was only for a short period of time, really. But there was definitely a few pubs where there would be jam nights. And yeah, the teachers and, you know, a lot of the gooder. I didn't do an English degree, clearly. It was all the better students, you know, a lot of them that really cared about developing their craft and being around these teachers, they would come down as well. And yeah, it was ridiculous. It was one of those things where you kind of get your guitar out of the case and you go, oh no, I don't think I'll play it tonight.
I think we'll chat about jam nights with Damo on another episode, because
definitely,
that's a subject that he's a real expert in as well. But Damo, coming back to you, so the music degree is done, and then there was this period where you went and worked abroad. And I want you to kind of tell us about that, because without kind of being, you know, too over the top, you were an incredibly competent and proficient musician before you left for this kind of international stint. And then I remember watching you when you came back, like the first couple of weeks when you came back to the UK, and I came to see you at a gig, and I remember genuinely being blown away by the acceleration in not just musicianship, but performing ability and confidence, and like the amount of kind of songs that you had under your belt, which were just being performed at an incredibly proficient and high level. Something happened in those couple of years while you were away that I think I'd love to hear about more, because the musician that came back was on another level, really, for me to watch. So what happened? Tell me, was it there a crossroads involved, and did you make a deal with the devil?
There was a crossroads. It was, well, I think it was, first of all, it was the right time in my life to do that. On the back of the degree, where I'd spent my 3 years growing as a musician and culminating in my 20-minute performance. That 20-minute performance was probably more important to me than I realised. Job opportunity came up working abroad, working for a holiday company, working in different hotels, and I ended up working. It was just over a year, really. I did this, and that amount of time was perfect. I worked in Crete, Mallorca, Egypt, Kefalonia, back to Egypt. It was great. It was something else. Some hotels were better than others. I had to do various different parts to that. I had to do 3:45. Basically, my remit was 3 45-minute sets a day for 6 days a week, and I wasn't allowed to repeat myself within a 2-week period.
And that, ladies and gentlemen, is how you do it.
Wow.
That's how you build a back catalogue. And
I was just going to say, that's like a pressure cooker, isn't it?
Yes.
That's how. Yeah. You had no choice but to get better did you? Yeah.
That's right. So I spent the first few months just learning songs, just learning, and taking requests. So, you know, somebody would say, oh, can you play me this? And I'll say, no, but I will tomorrow, because they were on holiday or captured audience. You know, you knew that they were going to come back. So, or the following day, depends how hard it was. And some were more successful and ended up in the set, in one of the sets, and some just never performing again. Bat Out of Hell is one of them. I remember going away. And
as a solo instrumentalist, you did
as a solo with the backing track, trying to sing it. I just realised halfway through, no, this was such a bad idea for me and my voice. Where apart from the person that had requested it, who was actually quite happy with it, I think it wasn't as bad as I make out. I think I did a okay job of it, but I like to do a much better job than just an okay job of it. I have refrained from doing Bat Out of Hell ever since. But yeah, but because I was multi-instrument, I could do electric guitar with backing tracks. I could just do singing by itself. I could do acoustic guitar with and without amplification. So that would be sitting around the pool while people wait for their paella to be served, and then I'd just strum some nice summery tunes and sing with no amplification whatsoever. Just sit there by the pool, all dressed in white, looking like the man from Del Monte. I was. And tanned more and more each day. It was ridiculous. It was lovely. It was really lovely.
Tough gig. Tough gig.
That was a tough gig. So yes, and then there was a piano in the lobby where you just go and play some instrumental stuff or sing along to, play some Billy Joel or some Elton John and or anything, that goes on the piano. So I had piano sets. What other things did I do? Oh, I did Christmas over in Egypt. So I did a whole Christmas set, which was bizarre, seeing people in their bikinis and budgie smugglers dancing to Christmas tunes.
That's not Christmas. Not Christmas.
Right by the pool. Yeah, that was quite strange.
Oh dear.
So you had to learn a full cross section of stuff, and I never stopped learning stuff while I was doing that. So it made life a lot easier when I came back, and I could then hone an actual set that I would take around to various different venues to play, and I didn't have to do 3 sets over 6 days without repeating myself in 2 weeks. So
no, you just decided to come back and do all of those sets in one go as a giant medley, which is the way I first saw you come back to the UK. And Matt commented earlier that you love a medley.
I do love a medley. So I did it.
Go on, yeah. Tell people about how that came about, because it's something that I know people that have gone and seen you comment on when you do the solo show.
I'm not sure whether I can name the set of this. But it was a whole medley of songs in the key of G.
It was. But that goes on for how long?
Well, it started off where I just had about 3 or 4 songs, and it eventually ended up, and I could do this by the end of the stint in Mallorca. I was doing it for a whole hour, and it would build and build and build and build, and just when you think it's going to finish, it goes on to the next song, and it was about an hour's medley, just under an hour, and I was definitely sweating by the end of it. It was hard going. It always went down really, really well. So bringing that back to the UK, I did that in a few festivals, little mini festivals, very locally, and it always went down so well. And I haven't done it for a long, long time. And I used to turn it into a bit of a quiz if people could name every single song and the artist. So they would start by not writing it down, and I would say, no, write this down. They don't know how long. You don't know how long this is going to be.
Yeah, they think, I'll remember 4 or 5 songs in a row, and then you realise you're getting onto song number 25, and this man hasn't stopped playing for like half an hour, and there's no signs of it stopping anytime soon.
Yeah, so that was the affectionately known G spot.
The G spot. Brilliant.
So now fast forward to the DLB, right? So after you came back from this international kind of stint, and then you'd really worked on your kind of craft, you were very, very focused and very determined to set up what was going to be your kind of future ventures here in the UK, which is the DLB. So tell us about that and some of the philosophy behind that and how it all came about, because it's a band, but as I said at the beginning, it's like a collective of different bands that is out there, obviously COVID pending, most nights of the week, 6-7 nights a week, and it's keeping you busy. So yeah, tell us about that.
So after spending a year or so away, I made the decision not to go back to working abroad or going on cruises, which were all offered to me. I'd already realised that I had not lost, but the connections that I had before I went away were not there. I was not on the call sheet for gigs or deps, so I'd had to go back and start again, making some contacts and gathering some musicians. The DLB was born pretty much as soon as I could, and we did a few local pub gigs. The DLB, Damiain Lodrick Band, was initially just there to start off, just doing some pubs, clubs, and seeing if we could get some functions. And that soon happened. And what I found was that the Damiain Lodrick Band was me. I know that sounds a bit odd, but it was me and whoever I could put behind me. And it was my job to lead those musicians and guide them through the gig without any rehearsal, and just let them and play stuff that was kind of nice and easy, that was well known by the audience, but was also well known by the band. So I do look back on that first gig, and some of the stuff we play, we don't do anymore at all. We did Under the Bridge, I think. But anyway, and that must have been from a leftover from working abroad doing that one.
So you developed then from being a musician to now you're a musical director.
That's right, yes. If say for the drummer couldn't make a gig, then ring up another drummer and say, this is what's happening. Would you be able to do it? Yeah, okay. And slowly and surely over the years built up this conglomerate of musicians that are able to come along and play at a drop of a hat with no rehearsal, a set list, which I'll probably email over. It used to be a bit of fun, really, because I used to send out a set list and then on the day sort of say, well, no, actually, we're going to be playing this set of songs. And I wouldn't necessarily be telling them what the songs are until the song happens. And that would be within the previous song. So there wouldn't be any gap. So the idea of these medleys will be starting to grow very, very slowly and surely. And the dance medley has grown out of being in different bands. So I've got this medley now, which has grown from the band The Cheese Doctors, which is a classic combination of funky music and superstition. And then we put Oops Upside Your Head into it, and Papa's Got a Brand New Bag, but then I've managed to eke this out now to about a 25-minute medley of all sorts of different stuff. And then there's at least 2 or 3 different medleys within each set. So it's very important to me. But the DLB has stayed this, that I am still the DLB, and I have got this group of musicians which I can call on. And therefore there's no band politics.
Yes, exactly. You're avoiding a whole host of problems there, aren't you?
And it's really worked. It's really, really worked from that point of view. It's it's just really worked. It's just really worked.
Cool. So medleying your songs was obviously a really slick move, and I've got to say, because one of my biggest bugbears whenever I've been gigging with any band, whether it's been depping or anything, it's time spent between songs.
Oh yeah, tell me about it.
It's a dance floor killer, isn't it? You got people up dancing, you've got to keep that time between songs really short. So if you can have a good long medley, and it just keeps the party going.
Absolutely. I will do very, very little talking. It's not that I don't have a rapport with the audience. It's that in between each, so coming towards the end of a song, it's like being a DJ, you're queuing up the next one with the band. I'm turning around and saying, we're going to be doing, if there's no set list down, we'll say, right, get ready, we're going to go straight into such and such a song. And that's where I will lead with my instrument, with the guitar. As soon as I can, off the back of the previous song, just hit them with the next song straight away. So there's no gaps. It's not medleyed, but it's almost mixed. It's seamless. It should be seamless.
Exactly. And I've depped with a couple of bands before, and what they've done is usually they've taken advantage of, if they've got a setup where everyone's on in-ear monitors, then usually somebody like the keys player who might be running the band but is not the lead singer, they'll have a microphone that's routed only to the in-ears of the band, not to the front of house. And quite often you'll be playing along and you'll hear from the keys player, we're going to go straight into Valerie, straight after this one, drummer, get ready for the beat kind of thing. And nobody can hear that except the band, but that's such a great way of kind of, you got a musical director in the band. As long as you're not the singer, it works. But that But that was a great, good experiences with other bands where you're kind of thinking, what's the next song going to be? Because they might not have written a set list. Somebody's going to call them out, and you think, am I going to be prepared? And then halfway through the song, you hear, right, this is the next song.
Yeah,
it's just a great way to control the gig, especially if you're reading the floor as well, because I guess that's something else you probably learned quite a lot.
That's
is
right,
to read the floor and not just stick to a set list. Sometimes you've got to change it as you go along.
That's right. So each set, so especially like working abroad, I'd have a longer list, and I still today have that when I'm doing solo gigs and I'm playing to backing tracks. I would have a much longer list than necessary, so I can go off in any certain direction that I want to. I know the path that I would like to take, but I know that I can go off in any particular direction depending on audience participation or lack of. Depending on however the evening is
exactly
going. You can never can tell.
No, you can't.
So people need to come and see this show.
I think so.
So where can they find out more about the DLB?
Oh right, the Facebook, the Damiain Lodrick Band. My name has got 2 I's in it because my father added one. So yes, it's DAMIAIN, which is really handy that I have to spell that, and Lodrick, LODRICK. So on Facebook, we've got a website, www.thedamiainlodrickband.co.uk. I think I've got an Instagram, the DLB.
You do. You've reached this stage now where you have someone else who manages your social media for you.
I do have somebody.
You don't even know what you've got, but you do, mate, and it's worth following, I would say.
Living the dream. Living the
dream. Look, I mean, it's been incredible to chat to you today. I know we're going to have you back on the podcast because there's a few key topics, right, Matt, that we thought it would be really good to have a deep dive into, things like preparing for a jam night and running a jam night or an open mic night, whatever you want to call it. And we haven't even touched upon today, Damiain. I mean, we talked a little bit about your kind of setting up a recording studio and a TV studio. But I think Matt and I were chatting, and it would be lovely to get you back to talk about, from a sound engineer's perspective, either in the studio or live, which I know you spent a good number of years as a sound engineer, helping bands achieve the kind of mix and on-stage sounds as well as front of house sounds that they want to achieve for an audience. You spent a number of years doing that, and I think we'll get you back to talk specifically about those things. But today was really about just introducing you to the Guitar Smarts audience, getting to know you a little bit, and then we'll love to have you back to hear about some of the other things that you've done in your life in music, but also to give our audience some top tips on those areas where it will apply to them, be it going to a jam night or going into the studio with their band to record. So thank you so much for being on the show today. Have we got some time for some listeners' questions that maybe we can get Damiain involved in while he's here?
Yeah, definitely. Well, do you know what? We put a request up on Instagram this week and Facebook, and Mr. Rob Skinner came back with some fantastic questions, right? Some really great questions, which I'm sure we've all got an opinion on, but this is his question. So, reading music for guitar, do you need to learn to read? What are the benefits of reading? Does reading standard notation actually get in the way of being able to play? And is learning to read standard notation on the guitar the same as reading on another instrument? So I'm going to keep my kind of answer brief to this, but my answer is clearly not, because I've been able to have some element of a semi-pro and amateur career, if you like, in music and continue to enjoy playing, and I can't read music. I can understand rhythmically. If I look at a piece of notation, I can understand the rhythm of things, but I couldn't read it harmonically. So I would say, from my experience, you don't need to. And actually, going back to somebody we mentioned earlier on, Victor Wooten, he's a fantastic teacher as well, and there's some great clips of him talking about this subject. He's a very much a proponent of learning to do first before learning to understand, and if you liken learning music to speaking a language, we never learn how to read before we can learn how to talk and communicate, and I think music's the same way. I think always learn and put first how to play, how to communicate, how to move people and yourself with playing your instrument. And if you want to learn how to read music, well, that's another way of communicating music, and it's something that you can do, but I don't think you need to. So that would be my answer. What about you, Dave? Damian, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree. Actually, I can read with. I'm okay. I would say I'm completely and utterly out of practice, but I can read and have done in the past. So, for example, did those shows, youth theatre shows, and all the guitar parts are written out in standard notation. So there's no tab. So you have to be able to decipher what's there. As you say, Matt, I found it a lot easier because what I did was I spent some time listening to the music. That piece of notation, which looks highly complicated, is actually something that all guitarists do as a matter of course. And you think, oh, okay. So it's just about recognizing patterns. I found coming at it from that point of view was a lot easier just being able to read. If you can just read, then I think you're giving yourself an awful lot more of a harder job. If you just read and you can't,
I agree.
If you can't improvise, you don't know what things mean in terms of improvising.
It's kind of, can you imagine being able to read a book but not being able to have a conversation with someone?
That's exactly
like
right,
that, isn't it?
It's exactly that.
So I think what you've both referred to is something that I like to think about in terms of like learning any language, right? It's and you've both kind of hinted at this in terms of being able to read or being able to converse. It's learning a language. So to the point that Rob asks in his question, which is, does it get in the way? No, only if you let it, right? And I think you've both touched upon something, which is, as musicians, you've got to be able to use your ear and use your common sense to guide you as to how you need to apply what you're reading to and what you're hearing to the piece of music. So it will only ever get in your way if you allow it to, and you lose your sensibilities of your other senses that you're using help you create the music that you want to create. But does it get in the way if you overly rely on it and neglect your ear? Of course. But like learning any language, if you can invest the time and dedication to not just learn guitar theory but also learn how to read music as well, it will enhance your experience of that language, be an incredible thing to have in your toolkit. So I would say don't stress about the fact that you can't read music. Use that time to spend learning some good knowledge of the fretboard and guitar theory in a practical context, and use your ear for sure, because there are all of us that can speak little bits of other languages without necessarily knowing how to write that language or read it particularly competently, but you can get by. So
we
yeah, Matt either needs a toilet break or he's preparing for a holiday in France. Oui, monsieur. Oui, c'est vrai. Did Rob ask another question? I think he did, didn't he?
I think he did. Yes, you're right. He also asked, is tab looked down upon by other instrument players? And if so, should it be?
So let's ask the multi-instrumentalist amongst us, which would be you, Damo. So you're proficient on a number of instruments. Is there part of you that goes, when I speak to other piano players, they kind of scoff at guitarists about the fact that we have access to tab?
They don't really know. It doesn't crop up. It's as though there's what? There's their own version of music. Don't be silly. I don't know. It could be seen to be down upon by reading musicians, because a reading musician will read standard notation as a matter of course. And if you are multi-instrumentalists, I can read treble clef, bass clef as a pianist. So I've recently had to write out some music, and I had written it all in standard notation, but I had to rewrite it because it was for 4 guitars. I had to.
I know. Thank you. I've got my one to learn and practice.
I've had to rewrite it in tab, but even the tab has got the tails to show the rhythm. Yes.
Which I actually, as someone who isn't great at reading music, I learned it at school and I know some of the basics, but not proficiently at all. But someone someone who predominantly relies on their ear and then uses tab just to kind of double check, or if I'm getting really stuck on a piece, it still feels like cheating to me, because it's not something you have to learn. It's kind of just obvious if you can read numbers and you know there's 6 strings on a guitar, you can use tab. So I think that's where the question comes from, because it kind of feels a bit like cheating. But I appreciated having the tab for that piece, even though it's a very simple piece, because it's a guitar harmony. I kind of want to see how it fits in with the other guitars, and even having that bit of music notation that you put in there helped me a little bit with some of the timings, just to understand how it was going to work. So having said all of that, it wasn't until I put a guitar in my hand and then tried to play it along with the full piece of music that I went, okay, what I'm seeing on the tab and what I'm seeing from my very basic understanding of music notation, I can now take that, but then I'm just going to rely on my ear and my feel, because that's ultimately what I've got to try and do.
And I suppose reading just opens up another world that you could be able to just be given a piece of music and play it. But I always remember being told this at university, that there are very few musicians that will read something that they would perform at that level. So that a performance piece of music, they would not necessarily just read off the cuff. They would not just be able to read it. A performance playing a piece of music that is of their performance standard. So you can always read things that are slightly easier. I suppose it's a bit like, English, which you touched upon, Matt. You can read something really complicated you might take in the words, but you would need to really decipher it to really understand it. If you were to be reading it out loud, you'd really need to study it for that little bit of time before.
You're always going to be the performance you make that is supported by a familiarity with the piece is always going to be better than one just straight off the cuff, having never heard the piece before, no matter how good a musician you are.
That's right, yeah.
Because you the space and freedom there for you to express yourself better because you know it.
That's right, yeah.
My opinion of tab is that it's only other. I mean, you can't have tab for piano, otherwise you'd have 88 lines, and everyone would just have a 1 on it. It'd be like reading binary. It'd be ridiculous. So it's just, I think part of it is the guitar is constructed and made in a way such that tab actually works out as a really simple method for being able to learn a piece or to record a piece without having to understand standard notation. But I'm same as you, Kiran. Tab for me is like I'm so used to being an ear player. Tab is something I use now only if I want to either write something down in tab so I don't forget something that's important, or, like if I'm really struggling to figure something out by ear and I need to work a way around it.
It's evolved, it's evolved into what it is, and it exists, and I don't see why it shouldn't be used.
Absolutely. Wonderful. Well, there we go. Another great. Thank you so much, Damian, for joining us.
It's been an absolute pleasure and an honour to be a part.
And a pleasure and an honour for us as well.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Well, we'll welcome you back to the Guitar Smarts podcast for another episode in the near future.
Yes.
I'd look forward to that. Guys. Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
No problem at all. Right. Well, Kiran, I will see you next week, and Damian, I will see you soon as well for another one.
Thank you very much.
All the best, guys.
Cheers,
see you soon. Well, that was another super fun conversation. I really hope you enjoyed it. Remember to come over to our social media pages, tell us what you think, ask us some questions, come and say hello, anything at all, share some information with us, give us ideas for podcasts that you'd like to hear and subjects that you'd like to hear us talk about in the future. And brilliant. Thanks very much for joining us, and we'll speak to you again soon. Take care. Bye-bye.